My next guest is Sean Kelly. He's a sustainability consultant and well known in these parts as a leader in public education on the environment and global issues. In his 30 plus years of experience, he has a lot to say, and we're going to hear about it coming up next. Hi, Sean. How you
Hello.
doing? Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Well, it's really great to be here because you talk a lot about climate action and sustainability. And I'm a big fan of the Climate Story Network, which is a passion project similar to this podcast of mine. So, I'm excited to have you on and to talk a little bit about today about your experience, what led you to here, and some of the things you're learning along the way. So I guess my first question is what led you to where you are today? You have 30 plus years of strong background in communications. Walk us through quickly and what got you interested in all of this?
Yeah, it's as you can tell from the gray, there's a few years on this model, so I've been at it for a long time. It's a bit of a long, somewhat circuitous route. I'd say as a child, my family and I did a lot of wilderness camping, so I've always
Mhm.
been oriented that way. I was quite political when I was young.
Right.
Involved in various issues when I was a teen. And I actually started studying theater at university and got quite interested in political theater, social issues theater. I ended up leaving halfway through university. I went to St. Vincent and the Grenadines and worked there as a volunteer. I helped run a preschool in the community and did some social theater. And I got very interested in international development, global development from more of a solidarity model. So
Right.
now I came back and finished my degree in international development. So I have this odd international development theater joint degree. And while I studied international development and increasingly worked on it, sustainable development was the thing that I was most involved in. That mixing of environment and economy. Back then, people used to talk about jobs versus environment. And I knew at a fairly, young age in my 20s, that made no sense, that you can actually have development in economics that has a green focus, that has more of an equity focus. So I went on to work in international development for a very long time, mostly with QSO, various roles, education, communications, recruitment. For a few years while I was there, in the 90s, for about 7 years, I launched and edited a magazine called The Sustainable Times, which was about environment development issues. So that started a bit of a history for me of doing environmental and development issue journalism. So that went on for a long time. And then after QSO, I worked with Community Sector Council, which is now IONS. Then I worked with Clean Nova Scotia Foundation, or Clean Foundation. So I was manager of communications at first, and then I became director of energy. And that was a great experience. Did lots of work around energy efficiency, climate, energy poverty reduction. But I was also very interested in that crossroads between environment and equity. So helped by being one of the instigators of the creation of the Clean Energy and Equity Network. So that's been really interesting. And then, I'm a consultant now, a sustainability consultant, but I've had this idea for quite some time for Climate Story Network, and then working with Pam Sullivan, who's the managing editor. We launched with a great board of directors the Climate Focus Society with this Climate Story Network.
Well, it's interesting to hear how you, at 30 years ago, you developed a strong interest in sustainability then. And you were very much an early adopter because not a lot of people were thinking at that time about sustainability.
Well, yeah, no, that's a good. I mean, there were people talking about these issues way back in the 70s and probably earlier. And but the 80s into the 90s, the Brundtland Commission, the Commission on Environment and Development, and early talk of global warming, as we call it, instead of
Right.
climate change, which is an interesting slight mistake we made, because people still talk about global warming and they go, well, it's still cold, so is it really global warming? But of course, it's climate change, more extreme weather, and all that. So yeah, I do feel I was part of a group. There was a lot of us, but we were definitely somewhat on the fringes. And people say, oh, well, you're just, you're going to cost people jobs. And I was very interested in green economics and talking about, well, what if we can create jobs that actually has a more sustainable environmental benefit? And I do remember a lot of us in the 90s saying, if we don't deal with this, things are going to be really bad in 20, 30 years. So, of course, things are getting a little worse 20, 30
Yeah.
years later. But we do still have time to take action. And that's one of the ideas behind the Climate Story Network, is to pass on solutions at the community level about climate change and get that into community newspaper and share it on social media platforms.
Recently, I sat in on a webinar that you delivered with, what was it, Net Zero Atlantic, and it was
Mm-hmm.
about climate action, and it was about the barriers, to climate action. And I loved that segment that where you focused on how there are a lot of people who there's a lot of blockages, and let's talk about that a little bit. Like there's blockages, and then you also have some ideas that change that.
Yeah, so talking about climate change has its own set of challenges. Climate change is not a singular event. It's many things. It's a slow-moving disaster, so to speak. And for a lot of people, that trade-off between short-term benefit and long-term can be really difficult. And climate change can be overwhelming. It can be very complex. It can be an overwhelming, even frightening problem. And some people that we may say are climate deniers, it's probably fear management. And I get that sometimes. Like, it's just so big and complicated that you have to have a bit of cognitive dissonance to get through your days if you work in this sector. There's fear of loss of jobs, of lifestyle, and there's a lot of other day-to-day things that can make it challenging. I mean, um, if you're living on lower incomes, those immediate threats are your reality. And I think it's particularly bad right now. There's a cost of living, cost of housing crisis. Maybe you're not in a location that easily has solutions. For example, there's no public transportation. You could be worried about costs. There could be immediate threats from inequality. If you're in a historically marginalized community, worrying about climate change may sometimes feel like a luxury, because you're dealing with discrimination right in front of your face, complexity paralysis. There's all these things. Plus, there's not the greatest reporting of climate change sometimes, and there's skepticism, there's lack of trust, there's active campaigns of misinformation, which is sad. I don't spend a lot of time talking to climate deniers. I don't have that energy. I don't think they're a large group, but they are a vocal group. And I don't think as a society we're not that scientifically literate anymore. I think we could go a long way to learn about that. But I think it's a large, overwhelming problem. People don't think their contributions can make any difference. Maybe the drop in the ocean kind of argument. And I get that's a challenging one to deal with. And then fear of job losses is really an honest and very strong reaction. If you get worried, you get kids going to university, just the cost of living. I get that some people are worried about the cost of things, which is why people have unfortunately successfully used things such as carbon pricing to just say it's a tax that's not needed. It's adding to the cost of living, even though the carbon tax is a minute part of inflation and in fact benefits more people the way it's set up now. So.
You mentioned earlier about complexity paralysis, and I'm curious, I guess that would be around the scope of overwhelming technical jargon. People don't understand that, would you say?
That's part of it. I mean, we talk about it, and I'm in the energy efficiency sector. We are guilty. We'll say 1 gigawatt of hour, but what does
Yeah.
that mean?
Right.
I forget what it means.
Yeah.
I think the problem is it's more the scope of it. You have every country contributing, every different layers, but every human contributing. You have we're dealing with weather now that's the result of carbon from years ago, and we don't know how bad it's going to get. And the solutions are complicated. The solutions are not that complicated. We know what we need to do, but you have so many pieces: society, governments, bureaucracies, companies, organizations. Sometimes they disagree on the solutions. They're fighting. So you have people deniers. And then again, just the size of it. Like, what can I do? Climate change is so huge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the drop in the bucket is a challenge. So I often say, let's shrink the bucket. What can we do in my community? What can we do in Nova Scotia? And the drops, it's a bit of a cliche, but they do add up. They're a bit of a great gateway to deeper solutions and work. But the other interesting thing is we can talk about co-benefits. So if you take action around climate, you can also make our ecosystems maybe healthier, more diverse. You can create green jobs. You can empower Indigenous communities. You can create those types of jobs that young people want, so they'll stay in this region. So I think co-benefits is interesting. I think we can talk more about values. In general, for my background, what I didn't say is that my second university stint was in adult education. And one of the foundations of adult education is you start where your learner is. And that's something that we in the climate sector can always do a little bit better. Sometimes we start with our organization, but you start with the people that you're trying to reach and go backwards. What's their values? What's their pain points? What might resonate with them? So we can do a little bit of a better job at understanding people's values and working there. Maybe it's community values. Maybe it's religious values, family values,
Cultural, that kind of thing. Yeah.
cultural values. There's always kernels in there that we can talk about climate change within that value system.
As a sustainability consultant, when you're working with your clients, let's say, or taking on a project, I got this from your website. You have 3 points where it's collaborative, curious, and creative. So walk us through a little bit about your process, depending on the project, of course, but what kind of tools do you apply?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So as a consultant, now wearing my business hat, I think context is as important as content. So it's really important for me if I'm working with a client on anything, be it some strategic design or communications or knowledge transfer, understanding the context is really critical. I do a lot of work that I guess could be called design thinking. So you want to know what's the context, and then you want to really think through the possibilities. What if we could do this, and then you start, what if, what next? Like what stands out, what makes sense. So for me, I am very curious. I still like people for the most part. And I am curious. I do like different cultures. Because I worked for so long, 20 years in international development, and had the very good fortune of working in West Africa and Thailand, the Pacific and the Caribbean. I love meeting other cultures and working in other cultures and understanding those contexts. So I find that really interesting. And then you have to be collaborative. If people aren't co-owners of the solutions, they generally don't work. You also have to embrace some messiness and embrace the fact that some things aren't going to work exactly how you want. And you build the road by doing. I think it was Moses Cody, the great Antigonish movement co-op pioneer, that said that. You build the road by doing, and make sure people are very involved. But really know your audience, their values, see how there is co-benefits on any project. And I've been lucky. I'm working with a Hamlet and Nunavut to help design an energy efficiency program for homes, which is really exciting. And then working with a Nova Scotian company that's doing some carbon removal. not carbon capture, but carbon removal, nature-based carbon removal. It's all really exciting for me. There's a lot of really cool stuff happening. So I'll be honest, in my informal slogans, I just want to do cool stuff with cool people. So that's where I am as a professional.
Exactly. And also part of that is your Climate Story Network, which is how I first started to follow you, was through these articles that are written by you and others. For those who don't know what the Climate Story Network is, can you explain what it's all about?
Certainly, climatestorynetwork.ca. And I don't write too much. When I comment, I try to write some, but we have a cohort of really amazing writers. These are professional freelance writers. They've been on CBC, CTV. They've been published in, The Walrus, Maclean's, Globe Mail, top-notch writers. So the idea was twofold. One, people legit are really worried about climate. So they have a lot of anxiety. They have a lot of nervousness. They don't know what the solutions are. They don't know what to do. And poll after poll shows there's a group of Canadians, I call them the muddle in the middle, who are worried about climate change, but they don't know what to do. They don't know where to begin. So I felt, and Pam and the others in the board felt, that we need to help build what we call plausible optimism, or cautious optimism. I mean, we're not naive, we're not Pollyannish, but the idea that there are some solutions happening, but people are caring about them.
Right.
So we wanted to highlight solutions through good storytelling and good writing. The other thing is we realized that community newspapers are still a really good source of information for a lot of communities. They unfortunately don't usually have the budgets to have like a climate reporter sort of thing. So we are commissioning professional writers to write stories about climate solutions, then making that content available for free for community media, newsletters, anyone who wants to use it. So we're getting solutions at the grassroots of media. Now, I will say community media and community newspapers are struggling,
Right.
and we're losing them all the time. So we're actually looking at developing an Atlantic-wide online magazine platform. We want to become the preeminent destination for climate reporting in Nova Scotia and the region. So that's something we're working towards. But I think people really want to learn about solutions. They need some cautious optimism, and I get that. I mean, if you only have doom and gloom, it's just overwhelming. It wears you down. It's leading to a lot of anxiety with young people. And if I may go on a slight tangent, when I hear older folks, me or older, say things to young people like, "It's up to you now. You have to fix crisis." They feel they're being empowering when they do that, but they're not.
Yes.
And it's also not true. We need all hands on deck, all generations working on climate solutions, and we should not download all the responsibility on young people. So
yeah,
don't do that, us older folks. It's not really fair to them. So we need your leadership, we need your ideas, but we will work with you, and we will all bring our strengths to climate solutions.
Absolutely, because you mentioned earlier how what did you say exactly? It's yesterday's or today's climate or today's weather systems are a result of yesterday's actions that we did. So
yeah, and that's,
which is a fact. It's doom and gloom, but at the same time, we have to have some hope and optimism in there too, to inspire people to take action. Because you don't inspire people by, you should be doing this.
Yeah, like guilt is not a great long-term solution. It just isn't. We know this. We can encourage solutions. And for those that are not interested in climate change, again, some of these solutions are creating really good jobs. And we can be a leader in green jobs and certain sustainable economies. So there's the co-benefits. I think we do need to support and promote a bit of cautious optimism. It is true that some of the effects we're feeling now are from things we did years ago, and that is the reality, which is why, some carbon removal techniques and work could be really exciting if there is a chance to turn the clock back even a little, buy ourselves a little bit more time. Another thing I think those of us in the climate space perhaps have done a bit too much and we shouldn't have is we say we need to do X by 2050 or 2030. So we put these targets.
Right.
But subconsciously, we've sort of created a situation where people think there's a lot of time. There isn't. But they're like, oh, well, we still have time to reach those targets. And of course, every year you don't take action, you have fewer years to really get into immediate reduction. So we do need to talk a little bit better, but we need to do this much every year
Right.
for the next whatever years to get there. But
and it's funny because you mentioned that, and I was thinking in the yardstick of sustainability, from let's put it on your personal observations from when you started to where we need to be. Where are we on the yardstick, I guess, of sustainability? Are we halfway there? Are we six?
Yeah, that's hard. I couldn't answer
Right?
that. I mean,
Yeah.
there's been great advances in solar energy and energy efficiency and more sustainable transportation, and that's actually really exciting because energy, of course, is a key part of this. So that's exciting. We need to do so much more. Nova Scotia is now looking at more solar, community solar, and interesting projects like that. As a society, we conspicuous consumption and buying cheap stuff that doesn't last is obviously an issue that we have to address. I see a lot of hope in First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities across the country getting involved very heavily in clean energy projects. That's exciting. You see it here in Nova Scotia. So there are some exciting things happen. We need to keep doing it. It's sad that we have to spend time arguing that climate change is real. I would much rather us be arguing about who has the best solutions. That's what I would love to see. Every political party arguing over my solutions on climate change are better than yours. And we're not seeing that. We're just, some parties are, but some parties definitely aren't. And it's hard to deny when you look at the data and year after year is getting hotter and the wildfires and the storms. And it's a little frustrating as someone who's been in this space for a long time to hear people still denying climate change. But people smarter than me have said, if we're wrong, if climate change isn't as bad as we say it is, what have we done? Well, we've actually created more energy efficiency, efficient homes, cleaner energy, more green jobs. If we're right and we don't do those things, the end result is much far worse. Worse is not really, or much far worse.
That works. I love how this conversation, I'm really enjoying what you're saying, Sean. And before we leave, is there anything else that that's important you want to share with everyone?
No, other than as climate activists, as people supporting climate solutions, I mean, we do need to connect the values, start where the communities are, start where people are. Remember that we don't live in abstract concepts like climate change. We live in communities, so we can do that. So that's really important. And certainly from a personal point of view, it's interesting. I've had people say, oh, when did you decide you wanted to be a climate activist? I never wanted to be a climate activist. I started studying theater. I worked a bit in film and made some documentaries. I made a documentary on diners, greasy spoons. I wanted to do things like that, but the reality facing us, we all use our talents and our skills in different ways. So, I have a son who's 22, and I see his generation and him and his friends are very political and socially aware and very involved, navigating that world about how to take action, what to take action on. So, I hope people still get to have happiness and creativity in their lives while also dealing with, these crises that the good ones know that they have to take some action on.
Well, I also encourage people to follow the climatestorynetwork.ca.
Yes.
And have the latest stories emailed directly to your inbox. And
there's some really good stories. Honestly, there's some really great stories on climate adaptation, climate mitigation, and real people in the real world doing real solutions. I think you'll really enjoy them. And Put them in your newsletters, share them on your socials.
Yes.
We'd appreciate it. And I think we can all collectively build a bit of a cautious optimism and help promote solutions that, you know, are our share of the climate crisis, but also creating green jobs for the next generation of Nova Scotians.
Excellent. Thank you, Sean. Thanks for your time today.
Great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Well, that was Sean Kelly. And he was talking about climate change solutions and also some of the barriers to climate change. Always enjoyed speaking with Sean, and I wish him all the best in the future. I have a feeling that our paths will cross again soon. This is the Reimagined Energy Podcast. I'm your host, Maria McGowan. Make sure you visit our website to see this episode and other episodes at reimaginedenergy.com. This podcast is brought to you by the Smart Energy event. It's an event that's held in Halifax every year, and then also it's coming up in Vancouver as well. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time.